Fix this, kid, and I'll give you 100 million. Dr. Harrison Blake jabbed his finger at 8-year-old Maya Williams like she was a pest. The little girl froze, clutching her backpack while her mother emptied trash around 200 silent investors. Blake's face twisted with cruel amusement. Maybe a child can solve what my MIT graduates can't. Vicious laughter rippled through MathCore Industries' boardroom. Maya's mother grabbed her arm, trying to drag her toward the exit. 2 million live-stream viewers watched the billionaire CEO destroy a little girl's dignity for sport. Behind Blake, screens blazed with error messages. His billion-dollar AI system had crashed 3 days ago. His team of experts stood helpless, shoulders slumped in defeat. Maya stared at those screens with unusual intensity. Her small fingers twitched like she was solving invisible equations. None of the adults noticed the spark of recognition in her dark eyes. They were about to learn the most expensive lesson of their lives. The crisis had started 72 hours earlier when MathCore's autonomous vehicle AI began making fatal calculation errors. Cars were crashing. Lawsuits were mounting. Blake's stock price had hemorrhaged $3 billion in 3 days. Now, in this marble-walled boardroom overlooking Manhattan, Blake faced the vultures. Toyota's executives sat stone-faced in the front row. BMW's team whispered urgently in German. Ford's representatives kept checking their phones, probably calculating how much market share they'd gain from MathCore's collapse. "Ladies and gentlemen," Blake's voice carried the desperation he tried to hide. "We're experiencing temporary technical difficulties with our core algorithm. My team assures me we'll have a solution within—" "Temporary?" Toyota's CEO cut him off. "Your system killed 4 people in Tokyo yesterday." Blake's jaw clenched. Behind him, 50 engineers hunched over laptops, their faces glowing blue in the screen light. Harvard PhDs, MIT graduates, Stanford prodigies, the best minds money could buy, all failing spectacularly. Dr. Sarah Carter, his lead architect, approached with trembling hands. "Blake, we've tried everything. Machine learning recalibration, neural network restructuring, complete algorithm rewrites. Nothing works." The live stream counter in the corner showed 2.3 million viewers now. Tech blogs were calling it the death of MathCore. Social media buzzed with memes about Blake's arrogance finally catching up to him. Maya watched from her corner, invisible to everyone except her mother, who worked methodically around the chaos. The little girl had been coming to these buildings since she could walk. While other kids played with toys, Maya studied the glowing numbers on abandoned monitors. She'd learned to read from discarded programming manuals, taught herself basic logic from overheard conversations between exhausted engineers. Her playground was the server room. Her lullabies were the hum of cooling fans. Blake paced like a caged animal. "This is why we maintain standards," he announced to no one in particular. "Real programming requires proper education, Ivy League credentials, years of rigorous training." His eyes swept the room dismissively. "You can't just walk in off the street and understand complex systems. Intelligence isn't democratic. It's cultivated through privilege, breeding, and elite institutions." Maya's mother, Rosa, bent over another trash bin. 20 years of cleaning these buildings. 20 years of watching brilliant people solve impossible problems while her daughter sat forgotten in corners. The irony would have been beautiful if it weren't so cruel. Blake's phone buzzed constantly. Board members, shareholders, competitors smelling blood. Every major tech company was preparing acquisition bids for MathCore's patents once the bankruptcy hit. "Sir?" his assistant whispered urgently. "The automotive executives are threatening to leave." Blake straightened his tie, forcing confidence he didn't feel. This demonstration was supposed to showcase MathCore's dominance. Instead, it was his public execution. The room's tension was suffocating. Billion-dollar deals hung in balance. Thousands of jobs waited for the verdict. The future of autonomous vehicles itself teetered on the edge of this single moment. Maya shifted in her chair, her young mind processing patterns that escaped the adults around her. She'd been watching their screens for an hour now, watching them chase complex theories while missing something beautifully simple. But she was just a kid. A cleaner's daughter, someone to be ignored, dismissed, forgotten. Blake checked his watch. The presentation was supposed to last 2 hours. He'd already burned through 45 minutes of stammering excuses and technical delays. "Perhaps," suggested BMW's representative with German precision, "we should consider alternative partnerships, Companies with more reliable systems. The words hit Blake like physical blows. His empire was crumbling in real time, broadcast to millions, witnessed by the industry's most powerful players. Rosa finished with the last trash bin and moved toward Maya. Time to go. Time to let the important people handle important things. But Maya's eyes remained fixed on those screens, her mind racing through possibilities that would change everything. What happens when the one person with the answer is the one nobody thinks to ask? Maya stood up as her mother reached for her hand. "Mommy, wait!" Rosa looked embarrassed. "Maya, no, these people are busy." But Maya's eyes stayed locked on the main display screen. Numbers and alerts flashed everywhere. While the engineers frantically typed, Maya saw something they'd missed completely. Blake was explaining to the automotive executives why they needed more time when Maya's small voice cut through the tension. "Excuse me." The room went quiet. 200 heads turned toward an 8-year-old girl who had no business speaking in this billion-dollar crisis. Blake's face darkened. "Not now, sweetheart. The adults are working." Maya took 3 steps forward, her backpack bouncing. "I think I see what's wrong." Uncomfortable chuckles rippled through the investor crowd. Toyota's CEO raised an eyebrow. BMW's team exchanged amused glances. "That's very sweet." Blake's voice dripped condescension. "But this is rocket science, honey. Maybe you should stick to coloring books." Dr. Carter started to intervene, but Maya pressed forward with startling confidence. "The computer is confused." Blake gestured at the wall of flashing screens. "Yes, obviously it's malfunctioning. That's why we have 50 experts trying to—" "No," Maya interrupted with unusual certainty. "It's not broken. It just doesn't understand what you're asking." The room fell silent. Every engineer stopped typing. Maya pointed at the main screen. "Right there. You're telling the computer to do something, but you meant to ask it a question." Dr. Carter squinted at the display, following Maya's finger to a specific line of code buried among thousands. "It's like when you say your name is Sarah instead of asking, 'Is your name Sarah?'" Maya explained simply. "The computer gets mixed up." Blake's confidence wavered slightly. That's not how programming works." "Can I show you?" Maya asked with fearless childhood curiosity. The live stream viewer count hit 3 million. Comments flooded in faster than moderators could process them. #8-year-old vs CEO began trending worldwide. Toyota's CEO leaned forward with interest. "I'd like to see what the child suggests." Blake felt trapped. Refusing would look petty. Agreeing would legitimize a child's opinion over his team's expertise. "Fine," he said through gritted teeth. "Dr. Carter, let her point out whatever she thinks she sees. When nothing happens, perhaps we can return to serious work." Maya walked to Dr. Carter's workstation, completely unintimidated by the room full of powerful adults watching her every move. "Here," she pointed at the screen. "The computer thinks you're changing something instead of checking something. You need to fix how you ask the question." Dr. Carter stared at the line Maya indicated, such a tiny detail buried in millions of calculations. Her fingers trembled as she made the smallest possible change, one keystroke, one tiny symbol. She hit enter. The room held its collective breath. Error messages continued cascading for a moment. Then, one by one, they began disappearing. System status lights shifted from angry red to cautious yellow to triumphant green. Within 60 seconds, every screen showed perfect operation. The AI system hummed back to life, running smoothly for the first time in 3 days. Maya smiled with quiet satisfaction. Sometimes computers just need you to ask nicely. Blake stood frozen, watching his billion-dollar crisis dissolve because of advice from a child who wasn't even old enough for high school. The room erupted in whispers. Phones buzzed with urgent messages. The automotive executives sat up straighter, suddenly very interested in continuing negotiations. But this was just the beginning. What happens when an 8-year-old embarrasses the smartest people in the room on live television? The room exploded into chaos. Engineers rushed to their screens, confirming what seemed impossible. The system was running perfectly. 3 days of failure fixed by a child's observation. Blake's face cycled through disbelief, embarrassment, and growing anger. That can't be right. One tiny change? Our entire team missed one tiny change? Dr. Carter pulled up system diagnostics, her voice shaking with amazement. Blake, she's right. The response time has improved by 40%. Error rates dropped to 0. Toyota's CEO stood up, suddenly animated. Show us the performance metrics. The main screen is filled with green bars and upward trending graphs. Every measurement showed dramatic improvement. The automotive executives leaned forward, whispering excitedly among themselves. Blake felt his authority slipping away like sand. Even if that's true, which I find hard to believe, anyone could have spotted that eventually. It was just a matter of time. Maya tilted her head with the innocent wisdom that only children possess. But you didn't spot it. And time costs money, doesn't it, Mr. Blake? Nervous laughter rippled through the crowd. Several investors pulled out their phones, frantically texting updates to their firms. Blake's assistant whispered urgently in his ear about social media exploding. #Maya the Genius was trending alongside #Blake the Blind. Stock prices were responding in real time to a child's success. This is ridiculous, Blake announced to the room. One lucky guess doesn't make someone a programmer. Real software engineering requires years of training, advanced degrees, and systematic methodology. Maya looked around the room of 50 experts who had failed where she succeeded. Maybe sometimes you just need fresh eyes? Dr. Carter couldn't hide her fascination. Maya, how did you see that when we missed it? You were all looking at the hard parts, Maya explained simply. But the mistake was in the easy part. Nobody checks the easy parts. BMW's technical director spoke up. What other easy parts haven't we checked? Maya studied the screens again, her young mind processing patterns that escaped the adults. There are more places like that one. Want me to show you? Blake stepped between Maya and the screens. Absolutely not. This has gone far enough. We have protocols, procedures, and professional standards. Are you afraid she'll find more mistakes? Toyota's CEO asked pointedly. The question hung in the air like a challenge. Blake realized he was trapped by his own arrogance. Saying yes would admit incompetence. Saying no would look like he was afraid of an 8-year-old. Fine, Blake said through clenched teeth. But when she can't find anything else, this charade ends. Maya approached the wall display with quiet confidence. She studied the scrolling code for 30 seconds, then pointed to another section. Here, same problem. You're telling the car to speed up instead of asking if it should speed up. Dr. Carter checked the line. Her face went pale. She's right again. And here. Maya pointed to a different area. The car thinks it should always brake hard instead of checking how hard to brake. More frantic typing, more confirmations of Maya's accuracy. How are you doing this? Dr. Carter whispered. Maya shrugged with childlike simplicity. When my mom cleans windows, she checks every corner. You guys only looked at the middle parts. Blake watched his team of MIT graduates being schooled by a child who learned programming from watching through office windows. His billion-dollar company's reputation was crumbling on live television. Even if she's found a few basic errors, Blake said desperately, that doesn't mean she understands our complex systems architecture. Maya looked at him with surprising directness. I don't understand everything, but I understand when something's asking the wrong question. Ford's representative spoke up. How many more wrong questions are there? Maya scanned the screens one more time. Lots, maybe hundreds. They're everywhere once you know what to look for. The room buzzed with excitement and horror. Hundreds of errors meant their vehicles had been dangerous for months. It also meant Maya could potentially save lives. Blake felt his world tilting. This is impossible. You can't just waltz in here and... Actually, interrupted BMW's technical director, this child has demonstrated more practical insight in 10 minutes than we've seen from your team in 3 days. The live stream comments were going insane. Programming professors from MIT and Stanford were logging in to verify Maya's findings. Tech journalists were writing headlines in real time. Dr. Carter looked at Maya with newfound respect. Would you be willing to help us find the other errors? Blake's voice cracked with desperation. She's 8 years old. This is a billion-dollar corporation, not a daycare center. Then maybe, Toyota's CEO said coldly, your billion-dollar corporation should hire better programmers. The insult hit Blake like a physical blow. His own clients were turning against him because of a child's success. Maya's mother, Rosa, finally stepped forward, overwhelmed by the attention. Maya, maybe we should go. These people have important work to do. No, said Ford's representative firmly. I think Maya's work is the most important thing happening in this room. Blake realized he was losing control completely. His experts were being outperformed. His clients were taking the child's side. His authority was evaporating in front of millions of viewers. But Maya wasn't finished. She had more surprises that would shake Blake's world to its very foundation. How many more impossible things can one 8-year-old accomplish before the adults admit they were wrong? Blake's phone exploded with notifications. His stock price had jumped 12% in the last hour. Tech blogs were calling Maya the child prodigy who saved math core. LinkedIn was flooded with posts about hiring practices and hidden talent. But the real pressure came from the room itself. The automotive executives were no longer thinking about leaving. They were thinking about how much money Maya could save them. Dr. Blake, Toyota's CEO said with new authority, I propose we extend this consultation. If this child can find critical errors your team missed, perhaps she can review our other systems. Blake felt the walls closing in. That's absolutely ridiculous. We're talking about life and death technology, autonomous vehicles that carry families, military-grade security systems. You can't just what? BMW's technical director interrupted. Trust someone who's already proven more competent than your engineers? The live-stream viewer count hit 4.2 million. Major news networks were picking up the story. CNN was preparing a breaking news segment about the 8-year-old who outsmarted Silicon Valley. Maya stood quietly in the chaos, studying the newest screens Dr. Carter had pulled up. These showed MathCore's other major systems: traffic management AI, hospital equipment controllers, financial trading algorithms. Maya, Dr. Carter asked gently, what do you see in these? Blake lunged forward. Don't answer that. These systems control critical infrastructure. One mistake could what? Maya looked at him curiously. Make them work better like the car system? The room went silent at her simple logic. Blake realized his objection made no sense. If Maya improved the vehicle AI, why wouldn't she improve other systems too? Ford's representative pulled out his laptop. Dr. Blake, our internal analysis shows Maya's fixes have eliminated 93% of processing errors. Our liability insurance costs could drop by millions. Blake's desperation peaked. This is insane! She's a child. She doesn't understand liability regulations, compliance standards, corporate responsibility. Maya tilted her head. Do computers care about those things? What? The computers just want clear instructions, right? They don't care who gives the instructions, as long as they make sense. Dr. Carter smiled despite the tension. She has a point, Blake. Blake felt his last shred of authority slipping away. The child was too logical, too correct, too devastatingly effective. His assistant rushed over with urgent news. Sir, Microsoft is on line 1. Google is holding on line 2. They both want to discuss partnership opportunities with Maya. The room buzzed with excitement. The biggest tech companies in the world were trying to poach an 8-year-old who had outperformed Blake's entire team. Blake's board members began calling. Investors were demanding emergency meetings. Competitors were circling like sharks, sensing blood in the water. This has gone too far, Blake announced desperately. Maya, thank you for your contribution, but I think it's time for you and your mother to go home. Actually, Toyota's CEO stood up, we'd like Maya to stay. We're prepared to pay consultancy fees for her continued assistance. Blake's face turned red. You can't hire her! She's 8! There are child labor laws, legal restrictions, educational requirements. Maya looked at the adults arguing about her like she wasn't there. Can I just look at the other screens? I promise I won't break anything. Her innocent request silenced the room. How do you deny a child who's already saved your company millions? Dr. Carter pulled up the hospital management system. What do you think, Maya? Maya studied the display with intense concentration. Within minutes, she pointed to several areas. Same problems. The computers are getting confused about questions and commands. More frantic verification. More confirmed errors. Each fix improved system performance dramatically. Blake watched his professional world crumble. A child was systematically exposing years of his team's failures in front of the most important clients in the industry. The financial trading system was next. Maya found 17 critical errors in 20 minutes. Errors that could have cost investors billions in miscalculated trades. Blake's phone rang constantly. Job offers for Maya poured in from tech giants. Media requests multiplied by the hour. His own shareholders were questioning his leadership competence. "Stop," Blake said quietly. The room turned to him. "I said stop!" Blake's voice cracked with desperation. "This is my company, my systems, my team. I won't have some—" He paused, searching for words that wouldn't sound completely cruel. "Some untrained child making us look incompetent." Maya looked at him with the devastating honesty only children possess. "But Mr. Blake, I'm not making you look incompetent. You already were incompetent. I'm just showing everyone." The room fell dead silent. Blake realized he'd just been publicly destroyed by an 8-year-old's perfectly logical observation. But Maya wasn't done with him yet. The biggest revelation was still coming. Blake's humiliation went viral instantly. The clip of Maya's devastating comeback, "I'm not making you look incompetent. You already were incompetent," spread across every social platform. #Maya roasts Blake became the #1 trending topic worldwide. But Blake wasn't finished. If he was going down, he'd take this arrogant child with him. "Fine," Blake announced with dangerous calm. "You think you're so clever? Let's make this interesting." He gestured to his assistant, who wheeled in a massive display showing MathCore's complete system architecture. Millions of lines of code controlling everything from traffic lights to hospital life support. 24 hours, Blake declared. "Find and fix every error in our entire infrastructure. All of it. If you succeed, I'll personally write you a check for $100 million. The room gasped. Blake was betting his entire fortune on destroying an 8-year-old's confidence. "But when you fail," Blake's smile turned cruel, "you and your mother leave this building forever, and we announce to the world that your earlier success was just beginner's luck." Maya looked at the overwhelming wall of data, thousands of systems, millions of potential errors, an impossible task for a team of experts, let alone one small girl. Rosa stepped protectively toward her daughter. "Maya, we don't need to do this. You've already proven yourself." But Maya studied the screens with quiet intensity. "It's okay, Mommy. I see the patterns now." Dr. Carter looked worried. "Maya, this is different from the simple fixes before. This is enterprise-level complexity, infrastructure that can't fail." Blake's confidence returned as doubt crept across the room. "Exactly. Real systems require real expertise, not party tricks from a child who got lucky." The automotive executives exchanged uncertain glances. Maybe Blake was right. Maybe Maya's success had been coincidental. Blake pushed his advantage. "Of course, if you're scared, we can call this whole thing off. No shame in admitting when you're out of your depth." Maya looked up at him with calm determination. "I'm not scared, Mr. Blake. Are you?" The challenge hung in the air like electricity. Blake realized he'd just been goaded into a public bet by an 8-year-old, but backing down now would look even worse. "Fine. 24 hours. Starting now." The clock began ticking at 2:17 p.m. Maya sat at Dr. Carter's workstation, her small hands barely reaching the keyboard. The main screen showed system after system, financial networks, medical databases, transportation grids, communication infrastructures. Hour 1, Maya developed her strategy. Instead of reading every line of code, she looked for pattern repetitions. The same types of mistakes appear across different systems. Hour 3, first breakthrough. Maya identified 5 common error patterns that appeared hundreds of times throughout MathCore's code. Each pattern represented the same basic confusion between asking and telling. Blake paced nervously, checking his watch every few minutes. The live stream audience had grown to 6 million viewers. Betting pools opened on social media about Maya's chances. Hour 5. Maya's systematic approach began paying off. She found clusters of errors in the financial trading system that could have triggered market crashes. Dr. Carter verified each discovery with growing amazement. Blake started his psychological warfare. "Getting tired yet, Maya? This isn't like finding 1 or 2 simple mistakes. This is serious work." Hour 8. Maya had identified over 200 critical errors. Each fix improved system performance measurably. Her method was working, but the scope was enormous. Blake sensed doubt creeping into the room. "Look at her. She's exhausted. This is exactly why we have age restrictions in professional environments." Rosa brought Maya a sandwich, worried about her daughter pushing so hard. Mija, maybe you should rest. I'm okay, Mommy. I'm starting to understand how Mr. Blake's programmers think. They make the same mistakes over and over. Hour 12. Midnight. Maya had found over 400 errors across dozens of systems, but thousands more lines of code remained unchecked. Blake's confidence grew as fatigue showed on Maya's young face. Perhaps we should call this off. It's past a reasonable bedtime for children. The media coverage intensified. News anchors debated whether Blake was exploiting child labor or teaching valuable lessons about overconfidence. Hour 16. Maya discovered something troubling in the hospital management system. Not just simple errors, but fundamental security vulnerabilities that could allow hackers to access patient records. Mr. Blake, Maya said quietly, bad people could break into your hospital computers and steal sick people's information. Blake dismissed her concern. Our security protocols are industry standard. You wouldn't understand enterprise cybersecurity. But Dr. Carter ran deeper diagnostics and went pale. Blake, she's right. We have massive security holes. Hour 20, Maya was running on determination alone. She'd found over 600 errors, but Blake kept moving the goalposts. Even if you find 1,000 mistakes, Blake announced, that doesn't prove you understand our quality assurance processes, our testing protocols, our deployment strategies. Maya looked up with tired eyes. I understand that your computers are scared and confused. They just want someone to give them clear instructions. Hour 22, Maya made her final discovery. Hidden in the deepest layers of MathCore's code were systematic backdoors. Someone had been secretly accessing their systems for months. Mr. Blake, Maya's voice was small but urgent. Someone's been stealing from your computers. Blake rushed to see what she'd found. His face went white as he realized the implications. Hour 24. The deadline arrived. Maya had identified 847 distinct errors across MathCore's entire infrastructure. More importantly, she'd exposed a massive data breach that could have destroyed the company. Blake stood before the room, his earlier confidence completely shattered. The 8-year-old he'd tried to humiliate had just saved his billion-dollar empire from catastrophic failure. But Maya wasn't done revealing Blake's incompetence. The biggest surprise was yet to come. The automotive executives waited for Blake's response. 6 million viewers held their breath. Maya sat quietly, exhausted but victorious. Well, Dr. Blake, Toyota's CEO asked pointedly, does the child get her $100 million? Blake's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. He was about to face the most expensive decision of his life. But first, Maya had one more devastating revelation that would change everything. What happens when an 8-year-old discovers that the real problem isn't incompetence but something much worse? Blake stared at the evidence Maya had uncovered, his face cycling through confusion, fear, and desperate calculation. The back doors she'd found weren't random security flaws. They were deliberate, sophisticated, and placed by someone with intimate knowledge of MathCore's systems. Ladies and gentlemen, Blake announced suddenly, his voice regaining artificial confidence, I need to make an important clarification. The room fell silent, sensing a dramatic shift. These aren't programming errors, Blake declared, pointing at Maya's discoveries. These are evidence of corporate sabotage. Our systems have been deliberately compromised by external hackers. Confused murmurs rippled through the crowd. The live stream comments exploded with speculation about corporate espionage and cyber warfare. Maya looked up from her workstation, tilting her head with innocent curiosity. Mr. Blake, why would hackers make the same mistakes your programmers always make? Blake felt a chill run down his spine. What do you mean? The backdoors use your company's coding style, Maya explained with devastating simplicity. Same spacing, same variable names, same comment format, even the same spelling mistakes. Dr. Carter rushed to verify Maya's observation, her fingers flying across the keyboard. Her face went pale as she compared the malicious code to MathCore's internal documentation. Blake, Dr. Carter's voice trembled. Maya's right. This matches our internal programming standards perfectly, down to the specific formatting rules we use in our training materials. The room buzzed with uncomfortable realization. If the sabotage matched Math Corps' internal standards, it couldn't have come from outside hackers. Blake's desperation peaked. That's impossible. External attackers could have studied our code patterns, reverse-engineered our methodology. Mr. Blake, Maya interrupted gently. The bad code was written at the same time as the good code. Look at the timestamps. Dr. Carter checked the file creation dates. Her gasp was audible throughout the room. The vulnerabilities were coded simultaneously with the main systems. This wasn't external sabotage, Blake. This was internal incompetence. Blake realized his lie was crumbling in real time. The back doors weren't evidence of criminal conspiracy. They were proof of systematic training failures within his own company. Even worse, Maya continued with childlike honesty. Your training program taught people to write code this way. You've been teaching the wrong methods for years. The automotive executives exchanged horrified glances. They weren't just dealing with security breaches. They were dealing with fundamental educational failures that had infected Math Corps' entire development process. Blake's assistant whispered urgently about stock prices plummeting as investors realized the scope of the company's institutional problems. Maya looked at Blake with curious innocence. Why did you try to blame other people for mistakes your company made? The question hung in the air like a sword, waiting to fall and destroy what remained of Blake's credibility. How do you explain lying to a child who's already caught you in the lie? Blake's lie hung in the air like poison gas. 6 million viewers had just watched a billionaire CEO try to frame hackers for his own company's failures. The live stream chat exploded with accusations of fraud, incompetence, and corporate deception. But Blake wasn't finished destroying himself. You know what? Blake's voice cracked with desperation. Even if Maya found real problems, she doesn't understand the business implications. Fixing these systems could crash our entire infrastructure. We could lose everything. He turned to the automotive executives with manufactured authority. These aren't just technical issues. These are carefully balanced systems that have worked for years. One wrong change could trigger cascading failures across multiple industries. The fear campaign began working. Several board members nodded nervously. Toyota's CEO looked uncertain. BMW's technical director frowned with concern. Think about the liability, Blake pressed his advantage. If we implement untested changes based on a child's suggestions and something goes wrong, we could face lawsuits worth billions. Entire hospital networks could fail. Traffic systems could collapse. Financial markets could crash. Dr. Carter started to object, but Blake cut her off. Sarah, you're a brilliant programmer, but you don't understand corporate risk management. The legal department would never approve experimental fixes from an unauthorized consultant. The room's mood shifted. Blake's business argument sounded rational compared to Maya's simple technical logic. Several investors pulled out their phones, probably calling lawyers and risk assessment teams. Maya watched the adults argue about her like she wasn't there. For the first time since this started, doubt crept across her young face. Maybe, Maya said quietly, maybe Mr. Blake is right. Maybe I don't understand enough about grown-up business. Blake pounced on her uncertainty like a predator. Exactly. Maya, you're incredibly bright for your age. But real-world systems require more than just technical knowledge. They require understanding of regulations, compliance standards, operational procedures, and risk mitigation strategies. The 8-year-old who had been so confident suddenly looked small and overwhelmed. The adult world's complexity was crushing her simple certainty. Rosa moved protectively toward her daughter. Maya, we don't have to do this anymore. You've already proven you're special. Blake's smile returned as victory seemed within reach. Perhaps it's best if Maya focuses on her education. Leave the professional work to professionals. But Dr. Carter knelt to Maya's level, speaking gently. Maya, you found real problems. The question isn't whether you understand everything about business. The question is whether the problems you found are real. Maya looked at the screen showing system performance metrics. Numbers don't lie. Data doesn't care about corporate politics. The computers are still confused, Maya said softly. They're working harder than they need to because the instructions aren't clear. But what if fixing them breaks something else? Blake pressed. What if your changes cause accidents? What if people get hurt because we listen to someone without proper training? Maya's eyes filled with uncertainty. The weight of potential consequences was too heavy for an 8-year-old's shoulders. Blake sensed complete victory. Sometimes the safest choice is to leave working systems alone, even if they're not perfect. The room fell silent. Blake had successfully weaponized adult complexity against a child's simple logic. But then Maya looked up with the devastating honesty that only children possess. "Mr. Blake, if the computers are confused, won't people get hurt anyway?" The question hit like lightning. Blake realized he'd just argued for maintaining dangerous systems to avoid the risk of fixing dangerous systems. Maya continued with innocent wisdom. "Isn't it scarier to keep broken things than to fix them?" Dr. Carter smiled despite the tension. Maya's right. The real risk is doing nothing. Blake felt his psychological victory slipping away. The child's logic was too pure, too correct, too impossibly reasonable. Maya stood up straighter, her confidence returning. "I don't know about business, but I know the computers are asking for help." The room waited to see if Blake would continue his desperate fight against an 8-year-old's unshakable moral clarity. But Maya wasn't done exposing the flaws in his reasoning. The final confrontation was about to begin. Can fear of change overcome the certainty that change is necessary? Blake realized his fear tactics were crumbling against Maya's unshakable logic. If he was going to destroy this child's credibility, he needed to attack her competence directly. "All right," Blake announced with dangerous calm. "Let's settle this once and for all." He gestured to his assistant, who pulled up MathCore's most complex system on the main display. Lines of code filled every screen, dense with mathematical algorithms and intricate logical structures. "This is our quantum encryption protocol," Blake declared. "It protects financial transactions worth $3 trillion daily. If even one calculation is wrong, the entire global banking system could collapse." The room tensed. This wasn't simple car navigation anymore. This was infrastructure that kept the world economy functioning. Blake smiled coldly. "Maya, if you're such an expert, fix this system too. But understand, one mistake here doesn't just crash a few cars, it crashes civilization." Maya studied the overwhelming display of quantum mathematics, cryptographic algorithms, and security protocols. Even Dr. Carter looked intimidated by the system's complexity. "Blake," Dr. Carter whispered urgently. "This is too much. She's just a child." "Exactly my point," Blake replied loudly enough for everyone to hear. "Real systems require real expertise, not party tricks from someone who learned programming by watching through Windows." The automotive executives looked uncertain again. Toyota's CEO frowned with concern. BMW's technical director shook his head doubtfully. Maya stood before the wall of incomprehensible code, looking smaller than ever. The live stream audience held its breath as 6 million viewers waited to see if the 8-year-old genius would finally meet her match. Blake pressed his advantage. "Of course, if this is too difficult, we can call it quits. No shame in admitting when you've reached your limits." Maya looked up at him with calm determination. "Mr. Blake, can I ask you a question first?" "What?" "Do you understand all this code?" Blake straightened with pride. "Of course. I designed the core architecture myself. PhD from MIT, specialization in quantum cryptography. Then can you explain why it's running so slowly?" Blake glanced at the performance monitors. The system was indeed running at only 60% efficiency, but that was normal for such complex operations. "That's acceptable performance for quantum-level encryption," Blake said dismissively. "Speed isn't everything when you're protecting trillions of dollars." Maya nodded thoughtfully. "But what if it could run faster and be more secure at the same time?" "That's impossible. In quantum systems, you trade speed for security. It's basic physics." Maya studied the screens again, her young mind processing patterns that escaped everyone else. "Mr. Blake, I think your quantum computer is making the same mistakes as your car computer." Blake laughed harshly. "Quantum encryption doesn't use simple if-then statements, Maya. This is advanced mathematics, particle physics, computational theory, far beyond." "But underneath all the hard math," Maya interrupted with startling insight, "the computer still needs clear instructions, right?" "Doctor," Carter moved closer to the displays following Maya's reasoning. "What do you see, Maya?" Maya pointed to a section buried deep in the quantum algorithms. "Here, the computer is trying to check if the encryption key is valid, but it keeps changing the key instead of testing it." Blake rushed to look where Maya was pointing. His face went white. That's not possible." The quantum verification protocol doesn't use assignment operators. But this part does, Maya said simply. The part that talks to the regular computers. Dr. Carter began frantically checking the code Maya had identified. Her gasps grew louder as she traced through the logic. Blake, Dr. Carter's voice trembled. She's found the bottleneck. The quantum processor generates perfect encryption, but the interface layer has the same assignment versus comparison errors we found everywhere else. Blake stared at his life's work being dissected by an 8-year-old. Even if that's true, the risk of modifying quantum encryption protocols is zero, Maya finished calmly, because I'm not changing the quantum part, just the part that asks the quantum part questions. The room fell dead silent as the implications sank in. Maya wasn't trying to rewrite rocket science. She was fixing the simple parts that talk to rocket science. It's like, Maya explained to the room full of adults, if you have a really smart friend who can answer any question, but you keep asking the questions wrong, so you get confused answers. Dr. Carter made the changes Maya suggested. One line of code, one tiny symbol changes in the interface layer. The system's performance jumped from 60% to 94% efficiency. Security strength increased proportionally. Quantum encryption was finally running at its designed capacity. Blake stood frozen as his masterpiece was perfected by a child's observation. The automotive executives erupted in excited whispers. This wasn't just about cars anymore. This was about every system MathCore had ever built. Maya, Toyota's CEO, stood up with newfound respect. How many other systems have this same interface problem? Maya looked around the room of screens displaying MathCore's entire infrastructure. All of them. Every system that talks to other systems has the same confused conversations. Blake realized his company hadn't just been underperforming for months. It had been systematically hobbled by training failures that infected every project, every team, every line of code his employees had ever written. The live stream audience watched in stunned silence as an 8-year-old revealed the fundamental flaw in a billion-dollar empire. Mr. Blake, Maya said with devastating innocence, why did you teach your programmers to write confused instructions? The question hit Blake like a physical blow. His training programs, his methodology, his entire approach to software development had been systematically flawed from the beginning. Dr. Carter pulled up system after system, applying Maya's simple fixes. Each correction improved performance dramatically. The girl hadn't just solved individual problems, she'd identified the root cause of every problem MathCore had ever had. Ladies and gentlemen, Toyota's CEO announced formally, I think we've witnessed something unprecedented. This child has not only earned her $100 million, she's revolutionized our understanding of system integration. Blake opened his mouth to object, but no words came. Maya had systematically destroyed his authority, his expertise, and his credibility with nothing but simple logic and devastating accuracy. The room waited for his response. 6 million viewers held their breath. Maya stood quietly, having just proved that sometimes the most complex problems have the simplest solutions. But the biggest revelation was yet to come. Maya's fixes had exposed something that would change everything about Blake's future. What happens when fixing the obvious problems reveals the hidden ones? As the room celebrated Maya's triumph, Blake's head of security burst through the door, his face pale with urgency. Sir, he whispered frantically into Blake's ear, we have a major problem. The system improvements have triggered our monitoring protocols. Blake's blood ran cold. What kind of monitoring? Maya's fixes didn't just improve performance, the security chief announced to the room. They've revealed something else. Our systems have been systematically compromised for the past 18 months. The celebration stopped instantly. Every head turned toward the security screens, now displaying evidence of massive data theft. Dr. Carter's face went white as she traced the exposed breach patterns. Blake, this is catastrophic. Someone's been using our performance bottlenecks to hide data extraction operations. Maya looked confused by the adult panic around her. What's data extraction? Stealing, Dr. Carter explained gently. When Maya made our systems run faster, she accidentally caught the thieves. The automotive executives gathered around the security displays, watching months of corporate espionage being revealed in real time. Customer data, Proprietary algorithms, trade secrets, all systematically siphoned through the same interface errors Maya had just fixed. Blake's assistant rushed over with more devastating news. "Sir, the FBI Cybercrime Division is on the phone. They've been investigating unusual data flows from our servers for months." The room erupted in whispers. This wasn't just about programming mistakes anymore. This was about national security, international corporate espionage, and criminal conspiracy. Toyota's CEO turned to Blake with cold fury. "You mean our vehicle designs, our customer information, our security protocols have been compromised for over a year?" Blake stammered helplessly. "We had no idea. The performance issues masked the security breaches completely." Maya raised her small hand. "Mr. Blake, does this mean the bad people were using your confused computers to steal things?" "Yes," Dr. Carter said grimly. "And if you hadn't fixed the confusion, we might never have caught them." The FBI agents were already en route. Stock markets were reacting to news of the breach. International partners were demanding emergency security briefings. Blake realized Maya hadn't just saved his company. She'd exposed the biggest corporate espionage case in tech history. But now came the final reckoning. With the whole world watching, Blake had no choice but to face the truth about what Maya had accomplished. What happens when a child's simple honesty exposes crimes that adults couldn't detect? The FBI agents arrived within an hour, transforming MathCore's boardroom into a crime scene investigation. News helicopters circled overhead. The world's media had descended on what began as a simple product demonstration and became the biggest corporate security story of the decade. Blake stood before the room that had witnessed his complete humiliation, his voice barely audible over the chaos. "Ladies and gentlemen," Blake began, his earlier arrogance replaced by broken humility, "I owe someone a very large apology and an even larger check." He turned to Maya, who sat quietly beside her mother, overwhelmed by the attention but still radiating calm confidence. "Maya Williams," Blake's voice cracked, "you have not only earned the $100 million prize, but you've saved this company from catastrophic failure, exposed massive criminal activity, and taught us all a lesson about wisdom, competence, and the courage to see clearly." The room erupted in applause. The livestream audience of 7 million viewers posted heart emojis and crying faces as Blake continued his public acknowledgement. "I formally apologize," Blake said, his words broadcast worldwide, "for underestimating your abilities, dismissing your insights, and assuming that intelligence requires credentials rather than clarity." Maya looked up at him with the generous forgiveness that only children possess. "It's okay, Mr. Blake. Grown-ups make mistakes too." Dr. Carter announced Maya's broader impact. "Her discoveries will save our industry billions annually and prevent the largest data theft in corporate history." Maya's story sparked a global movement. Companies began hiring fresh eyes consultants. Universities created programs for unconventional thinkers. Parents started truly listening to their children's insights. But the real change happened in millions of individual hearts. People who had been dismissed, overlooked, or silenced found the courage to speak up. Maya proved that brilliance doesn't require credentials. It requires the courage to see clearly and speak truthfully. How many Mayas are sitting quietly in corners right now, waiting for someone to listen? Share this story if you believe talent deserves recognition regardless of age, background, or credentials. Like and subscribe to help us find the next overlooked genius who could change the world. Tell us in the comments, have you ever been underestimated? What would you fix if someone gave you the chance?
The story you heard today wasn't cleaned up. It was told exactly as it happened. At Black Voices Uncut, we believe that's the only way truth can live. If you felt something, hit like, comment, and your reaction, and subscribe. Every week, we bring you voices that refuse to be silenced.